All right. Welcome to everybody. This is our newest Bear Ski attempt at a little bit more of a consistent programming. This is going to be our little bit more expanded NFL talk. I'm Dave. If you guys have watched before, I'm joined by Carl, who's going to be our regular co-host from Thigh and Smy podcast. One of my favorite people to talk to since we've been doing our Bear Ski podcast. So I figured it would be a great place to kind of bounce ideas off of. And Carl, thanks for joining me, man, for this new experiment. And how you doing?
Real good. Thanks for having me on, Dave. I'm excited. I mean, it'll be fun to just talk NFL. Yesterday on your guys' show, made the great point. We'll have something happy to talk about, something nice, not pigeonholed into the Bears sadness, so to speak.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, I'm an NFL fan. It is always much easier to be an NFL fan when your team is good. But if you just kind of like the beauty of the game, like I do, and kind of just the interests and the storylines, I feel like pro football, especially with the colors and the drama, it's the men's soap opera, for 20 weeks out of the year.
Yes, it's the best soap opera in the world.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a big Seinfeld guy, and it's just like, it's the guy changed shirts. What are we doing here? I hate this guy now because he changed his shirt. But yeah, no, when they're playing for you, it's all good. But when they're not, I still like to talk about it, and I do like the perspective of it and the history of it. Growing up, I watched like every single episode of America's Game like 50 times because it was running on NFL Network. So I'm happy to kind of just talk about something a little bit more cheery, give it a little bit more of our football perspective too, I think, because I think that interests people in the sense of creating our critique of the Bears too, right? When they see the perspective of the national audience and what you think of these teams and those teams, I think it also kind of dictates what you look like as a Bears fan and what you expect out of the Bears moving forward. So we'll always be a little bit more Bears centric just because we're homers and it's a Bear Ski podcast and you're wearing a Bears hat. You got that great sign behind you and all that, but we're going to talk a little bit more exclusively towards the NFL and maybe draw some comparisons and parallels back to the Bears. So first topic of the day, I'm going to have you start it off. So Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season matchup, which actually tends to happen. The Bills actually kind of own the Chiefs the last few years in the regular season. How do you feel it's going to carry over into the playoffs this season? And do you see something different happening than usual?
Right. So that was the Chiefs' first loss of the season. But I don't have this in front of me, but there was a great piece of either data or a breakdown where the Chiefs were 5 plays away from being 4-5. Like their season has not been perfect. They've essentially gotten lucky. Some calls, of course. Everyone likes to bitch about the Chiefs and the referees. But the question is, do I think that could carry over to the playoffs? I think the most important thing is for I'm sorry, not the Bears, the Bills to have the same situation, right? They won that game because they're at home. It was a close game, but those fans were electric. I don't know if the Bills were fully healthy. I'll see if I can find that out. But assuming both teams are full strength and the Bills are at home, I don't see why the Bills couldn't win. I mean, I think the world of Josh Allen. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. I don't know if he's going to be the MVP of the league this year. But if you ended the year with saying that Josh Allen was the best quarterback in the NFL, I don't really think that that's an incorrect statement.
I came into this season thinking the Bills were going to be on a huge downturn. I don't know about you. I saw the moves that the team made and just losing both safeties, losing a couple starting linemen, losing their linebackers left and right. I think Matt Milano's now out for the year, and somehow, some way, Sean McDermott just figures out a way. And it's one of those stories and one of those teams where I couldn't believe it. But as long as Josh Allen is healthy and playing, that's a 10-win team penciled in every single season until further notice. We said that about Patrick Mahomes, and somehow, some way, he sucks this year. If we're being completely transparent and completely honest, guy's got 2,400 yards, 15 touchdowns, 11 picks. That's just the most mediocre quarterback play in the NFL. Granted, his weapons are depleted, but I think this is just one of those magic times where the NFL is crazy where you just need to keep throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And this is one of those years where I just hope to God the Bills get lucky. I think they're a better overall team right now. Somehow, some way, the Chiefs keep winning. And I know the stat you're talking about where it was that little graph that showed every one score game in the NFL this year if they had flip flopped in result. And I think The Chiefs were, like you said, they went from the highest win total to the lowest win total. There was teams like the Bengals that would have the Bengals would actually have the best record in the league this year if those score games just flipped over. So those one score games, and we've been talking a lot about that in Chicago with Matt Eberflus being 5-17 in the last 22 that he's had. But yeah, I think this might be the Bills' year, and I personally hope so. I do like dynasties. I do like excellence in sports. I don't disrespect them when they win. When everybody's like, "Man, this team's annoying because they just keep winning," I'm like, then beat them. Then hope somebody's good enough to beat them. I don't find that offensive in any way, but I do hope that the Bills kind of pull this one out, especially with the storylines coming out from this year and all that stuff. So GK saying Milano is set to play after the Bills.
Yeah.
I thought
I'm trying to get confirmation on that, but that feels like a huge get for them, right?
Yeah, because I was under the impression torn pectoral end of the season.
Normally, that's exactly what that means because it's like a 3-4 month injury. But if he's able to play, I mean, pardon my French, that's the Italian who always gets hurt, right? Like,
yeah.
He's one hell of a player, is all I'll say regarding that. Because if they can get him, he's a true leader. Something specific. Well, I guess two things about the Bills, right? Everyone kind of really wrote them off in the public eye once they traded away Stephon Diggs. Oh my God, you just lost your alpha number one wide receiver. Again, a little bit of Bears bias here. He was a Bears killer. I am quoted, and I view Stephon Diggs as a locker room cancer. He was having a great season for the Texans before he got hurt, which sucks. But I think it's a bit of addition by subtraction. And on the defensive side of the ball, the Bills have potentially one of the best fourth quarter pass rushing units in the entire NFL if they can get it all right. I don't know every single name. Russo's underrated. I absolutely adore Ed Oliver. And then Von Miller, if he can play like Von Miller, that's a really hard pass rush to stop when the Bills are coming at you and they know that you're throwing the football. So again, they took a really good step forward, winning against an undefeated team. They're on their way to try and hopefully get the number one overall seed, get a bye, get healthy. And then at that point, again, I would not be surprised if the Bills find their way into the Super Bowl.
I would personally prefer it. I like to see a little bit of change going on, and the heartache.
They deserve it too. They lost 4 Super Bowls in a row, and I don't think they've ever won a Super Bowl. They deserve
exactly
a Super
where
Bowl,
I was going with that,
Josh
man.
Allen, so.
Yeah, I like the fans in Buffalo. I love what
they're so much fun.
For. Yeah, and then part of me hates Sean McDermott because I feel like he's the anti-Matt Eberflus. He's exactly what Eberflus would be in a best case scenario. He's a defensive head coach. They run almost identical defensive schemes, and he's just good at it and a good game manager, and he trusts his offensive coordinators and Joe Brady and to just kind of come in and be ballsy with his play calling and kind of just coach up his players. You want to see what the Bears should have been or could have been, it's the Bills, honest to God, because that's kind of why I like them, because they are following a similar model as what the Bears are doing right now. I hate them because they're just doing it better than us. So you got to be honest.
The skill group on paper, the Bears blow away the Bills, right? They have 3 better wide receivers. They have at least the same. I think DeAndre Swift is better than James Cook, but the difference right there.
We'll call that a wash.
Yeah, I like wash there. Much better proven quarterback right now. We don't have to talk about projections and potential talent, any of that stuff. And then their offensive line, obviously, night and day. Bears offensive line, terrible before injuries. Or they're bad before injuries, terrible with injuries when you're down to your second and third choices. Even the Bills, I believe, are bringing in second string guys due to injuries, and they're still, kicking ass.
That's the part of it that kind of pisses me off, because if I'm not mistaken, they do have Deion Dawkins, who's like an all-world left tackle.
Fantastic left tackle.
That's pretty much
Mitch
it,
Morse go. They traded away Ryan Bates, who we can get into the Ryan Bates debate. I know you tried to flame me yesterday, but that's okay.
I honestly didn't try to because I couldn't remember who made that statement. So I didn't try to. I just kind of I was.
You have permission to flame me whenever you want, on camera, off camera. I could give a what, man.
Yeah, same totally here, man. Yeah, no worries. It's all just football takes. But yeah, that's kind of the one thing. And I think 8 weeks through the season, I remember seeing that statistic. And I don't necessarily, we had this conversation pre-show, believing in PFF and their grading scales and all that stuff. But DVOA and all those actual, sabermetric elevated statistics, they had the number one offensive line through 8 weeks in football based on just statistics, pressure rates, yards per carry, pancake blocks, lack of pressures on their quarterback. And that's just kind of a testament to yet again, a reason I'm jealous and pissed off of just finding talent, young talent, elevating it, making your offensive line better rather than making excuses as to why they're not going to be good. The scheme is also crucial and important, and what the quarterback is doing is also stupid, crazy important. And but this is just the epitome of Josh Allen. He's taken everything that he's good at and eliminated mistakes, which was his one big downfall. And, cut down on the interceptions and the fumbles. And this is what you get. You get a 10-win team with one guy carrying the load offensively.
Yeah, it's awesome to see them kind of patchwork an offensive skill group around him, just like Mahomes last year. I think that Mahomes, who won the Super Bowl with this cast of players, that was a terrible group of wide receivers. Obviously, you still have Travis Kelce, and I think that's the big difference now, is that Travis Kelce probably has, at this point, maybe 5 Hall of Fame games left in him in his career. He's just going down fast.
I think you're being generous with that number. Yeah, then.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's call it, in the playoffs he'll rise, whatever you want to say. And then regarding Mr. Matt Milano, it wasn't a torn pec. It appears to have been a bicep injury. And I'm reading this related story. It's saying that he suffered the injury early in the season. So I think before the preseason, maybe? I can't tell.
I want to say it was like week 1, but yeah, that makes sense. One more thing about the Bills before we move on to the next topic. I just love their trajectory. You're talking about like how they patchwork their offensive staff and their offensive grouping together. They ate a lot of dead cap this year to kind of get rid of those more expensive players like Jordan Poyer. I forget who else it was. They could have eaten the Von Miller contract, but they didn't. The other safety was Jordan Poyer and
Micah Hyde.
Micah Hyde, thank you.
Yeah.
Is he a Green Bay Packer right now? He's not starting.
He was.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, no, they did eat a lot of dead cap. Their rookie and their young running back are their rookies and young receivers and all that stuff. I see that team only being better projection wise next year as well after they pull off what they do this year.
Assuming that Coleman is able to develop into a true alpha and you're able to get, I believe he was either a first round pick or a second round pick, I think
he was a second. Yeah,
if
early
he can
second.
play to that draft position, they'll be totally fine. And then a little bit of a tangent. I love Khalil Shakir. I think that he's one of the most elusive players in the entire NFL across any position, along with maybe like Tolbert on the Cowboys. That guy's the real deal for what they use him for. Just the way that we saw DJ Moore for the Bears being used as like the quick game yak guy. Khalil Shakir, far and away superior to DJ Moore in that regard, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope they win, and then I hope they're more competitive even next year. And go Bills. That division's wide open for them for the next few years. So let's hope they.
After what happened with the Jets firing their general manager, reports saying that Aaron Rodgers is not going to come back. I mean, ironically, the team that seems the bit most scary would be the Patriots if their quarterback can continue to ascend the way that he is.
I agree. Poor Tua, man. Just stop playing football, dude. Honestly, but it is what it is. All right. Keeping it in the AFC, we got awesome game. Awesome game was the Steelers-Ravens. Steelers are currently leading the AFC North after beating the Ravens. Do you feel like they're for real, and how do you feel that division shakes out?
Now, again, Bears bias. For the listeners, you're going to have a lot of University of Michigan bias from me as well. I'll try and keep that under wraps. So they definitely, in my opinion, upgraded at the quarterback position once Russell Wilson took over. They, as far as passing the ball, look better. It seems to make Najee Harris look better. Are they a contender? No, and it's a bit premature maybe to segue into what we'll talk about with the Vikings, but I would consider the Steelers to be the AFC version of the Steelers. Kind of a bit of of the Vikings. An overinflated record. They're good. They have a fantastic head coach who in crunch time, I don't know who else you'd really want. But there's just something about them. I don't trust them, the Steelers, that is. I'm trying to get the statistics from their secondary. They actually have a very, very good secondary regarding, or as per my favorite statistic, that's EPA per DB, expected points added per dropback. They're actually good. But for me, it feels like the Steelers secondary is something that could help them fail. I mean, their front seven is really good. They have one of the best pass rushers in the entire world. But outside of that, I mean, I don't trust them, especially compared to the Ravens.
Gotcha. I'm looking at that where you're bringing up. They're 21st ranked in sacks, which is not very high considering what they are defensively considered to be. If you're if your DBs and your linebackers are playing that hard, I think without the consistency of a pass rush, you're not going to see that translate very much into the playoffs, kind of like to support your point. Never heard that comparison before, by far, at all. Love it. Vikings and Steelers are basically clones of each other in each division and each conference, even with the piecemeal quarterback that's kind of on a budget and just executing game plans with talent. I think Sam Darnold has it a little bit easier in terms of personnel and stuff like that. I think he has an easier job to pull
it's
off.
debatable. This is going to be a bit of a reach, so I apologize. It's not weird or like flat out wrong to say that the number 2 receiver for the Vikings, Jordan Addison, he's not far and away worse than George Pickens. And after George Pickens on the Steelers, what do they have at wide receiver?
I genuinely can't name you their number 2. He's the
It'd
guy
be
who
Pat
took a
Fryer
quick slant.
oh boy, it's not. They got rid of Deontay Johnson.
Yeah,
boy, there was a guy who used to play for the Rams who's on that team.
Calvin
now.
Austin. Holy cow!
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah,
that's Calvin Austin, and their top receivers are George Pickens, then Freiermuth with 295 yards. Calvin Austin with 276, and Najee Harris is their 4th leading receiver. So to support your
I did
point,
see
that's
that George
absolutely
Pickens
crazy.
is in the top 5. If you're big into Madden, George Pickens is going to have the first ever 100 rating for spectacular catch. You got to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he's just like a classic Steelers wide receiver, walking case of CTE, waiting to explode. So let him have his fun, and once he gets his contract extension, it's going to be all hands on deck.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin's going to have his hands full with another brain case to kind of just fight through between Antonio Brown and
trade away
Le'Veon
to
Bell.
the Bears for the 33rd overall pick.
I mean, I think, I wouldn't be surprised by it, but yeah, and then I forget Chase Claypool was there too. What a head case as well there. Yeah, I mean, to kind of answer that question, I don't know if they're for real. They are for real in the sense that they are 8-2, and I feel like they're a legitimate 8-2. They have matched up with some actual tough teams and beaten them by the skin of their teeth. Will that carry over? I don't know. To kind of bring that up. I never liked the Bengals this year. I still don't like the Bengals. I don't think they're a good team. I didn't see them being a good team going into this year. My biggest issue with the Bengals was Joe Burrow's wrist, which kind of he has proven himself that it was not going to be as big of an issue as the season progressed. And going into next year, guess what? I'm not going to be hating on the Bengals that much because I know that Joe Burrow's there and he's healthy. But Joe Burrow's out. That team is out of this division race, and it's not really going to be an issue. I don't want to hear any more people tell me that the Bengals can sneak into the playoffs anymore. I don't care. Don't tell me they're going to do it anymore.
Mr. Harbaugh, put that right to bed. We'll get to that in a little bit.
No, and then the Ravens, I feel, are the same way you don't trust the Steelers. For some reason, I just don't trust the Ravens, and I want to
Lamar
so
Jackson,
badly.
Not as far as a passer of the football, but just in the grand scheme. And I know Peyton Manning has 2 Super Bowls, but it feels like Lamar Jackson is that type of player where he's this iconic MVP dominant force in the regular season. Oh, here's the playoffs. I gotta hide. Yeah. So he needs to prove it. If he wins a Super Bowl, I'll still be skeptical, as stupid as that would sound. But he has probably the perfect storm to try and win it. Again, like how we talked about, the Chiefs are kind of starting to fall off. The Bills, they aren't as strong as maybe they even were last year, even though the quarterback's playing fantastic. The Ravens, if they don't win the Super Bowl or get to it, what's the excuse? So,
yeah, I think the Ravens end up coming out of that division as the best team and the division winner. Frankly, I just think that they're just more consistent as a regular season team. I've drawn a lot of parallels because I grew up and I was raised on like the 2010s football. I always say my comparison was Dak Prescott is this generation's Phillip Rivers, right? And then I think like how you're saying, I think Lamar is kind of like this generation's Peyton Manning. I think he's going to be cooking for 10 years. He might win one, and it might be just like he's going to be matched up with the Eagles and just Jalen Hurts just shits his pants or something like along those lines, right? So, yeah, I think they're going to end up winning. Do I think that they're going to carry too far into the playoffs? My ideal situation is a Baltimore, Buffalo, and an AFC championship, just because I do like Kansas City. I just don't think that it's their year. And if they three-peat or sniff a three-peat, man, I'm not big on referee interference or conspiracies or anything like that, but this team is just not good enough to be one of those top 2-3 teams in the AFC. So I'm going to call bullshit if they kind of carry their dead bodies into the AFC championship this year.
Yeah, the dead body of Travis Kelce. That's right. I heard something funny, and this is obviously just essentially toilet speak, but while listening to ESPN 1000 today, for a brief moment, a caller called in and said, "Hey, I love your guys' show. I listen to ESPN 1000 all the time, but I'm from Kansas City." I was not me, the radio listener was saying, or talker was saying, "Hey, I listen to the locals. They're saying if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year, both Kelsey and Mahomes will retire." I said, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, not Mahomes. I don't see any reason for Mahomes to. I
right.
could see Chris Jones and Travis Kelce retiring, but
Yeah.
if that happens, I mean, the Chiefs are just not. They're not set up for that rebuild to be handed off that easily and that quickly. It would be like a nice 2-year step back to kind of reshuffle and retool. And Patrick Mahomes is what, 28? I don't see him retiring over that. So,
No, that'd be a lot of money that he'd be, leaving out there, in my opinion. I mean, he probably has one more contract left in him where he's going to get a good payday if
oh
he
yeah.
plays it right.
To kind of transition randomly off of that, though, me and Paulie are always big fans of the Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes contract methodology, where
Absolutely.
you never go for top 5 money, you go for 12 to 15, and then just win, and then your sponsorships are going to triple what you would have made with that
What's
extra
on
20
public?
million.
I looked this up. Mahomes is making like half of his annual NFL salary just from his sponsorships.
Yeah. So I mean, we're talking 50%. You're easily, by just being relevant and winning, you're gonna make more money, and that's why I hope, as a Bears fan, Caleb Williams kind of follows that suit. I think it is quite hilarious that Caleb Williams, for the rest of time, has ruined the ownership stake in a team for a quarterback just by even with his dad, just throwing that concept and that idea out there, and then pulling off what he did this year. Every team is going to laugh in that quarterback's face for the end of time. Does not matter how good of a prospect you are. It could be Archie Manning saying, "I want 1% of the Colts." And Jim Irsay could say, "Yeah, it'll never happen now because of Caleb Williams." So good props to Caleb Williams and his dad for knocking that out and never having it come back. So I always love chats, even if we don't have a lot of viewers, Carl. I just respect and appreciate so many people, even 10 people listening to me talk about football. I always don't take for granted. So I gotta participate in some chats, even if they're Chicago based. So got Kanye, we got Yay. Let's see, hopefully this is a good point, not crazy. Flus has lost 30 out of 44 games. 22 games have been one score. Lost 17 score games. 5-17 and one score, divisional record 2-11 against 500 teams. Yep. I mean, you're just pulling out stats, man. No, it's not a word of a lie.
The one thing I hate about those record statistics, right? The Bears hired Eberflus in 2022?
Correct.
They told him, they said, "You are not going to lose in 2022. You are going to lose bad." And what did they do? They earned the first overall pick with Justin Fields. So if you want to have the record statistics, they do speak for themselves. Just take 2022 out of it, please. But I agree with you, Kanye West, whether you're the real Yay or not.
I don't know if you can take out 2022. And I used to agree with you, Carl. And I was a big guy of tank. And Paulie was just saying, like, dude, I can never root against the Bears on a Sunday. And I would openly be like, let's lose. Let's just see Justin Fields throw for 300 yards, but let's lose every single game. And I think that's where we're approaching that kind of thing with Caleb Williams. But I was a big fan of that. That first season, man, I think just coaching in the last 3 years, and this is total hindsight and retrospect. So I was with you up until this year, and I think Sean Payton changed my mind. Sean Payton changed my mind by taking a absolutely carbon copy situation in Denver this year and making them competitive. And even though they're mid-level talent and mid-level record, I feel better about the Denver Broncos now moving forward to next year, even with like the 18th pick, than I would with the Denver Broncos tanking, Bo Nix looking great, and then having the first or second pick. So I think there's something to that.
I don't care what Bo Nix has done. I don't value him and think that he's a good NFL quarterback. He's proven me wrong each and every time he throws the football. But my God, Sean Payton is absolutely worth every single draft asset, every dollar, everything that the Broncos have invested in Sean Payton. He is the real deal. I really wanted him for the Bears.
I agree, and that's the same way of saying, like, well, Sean Payton's actually only 8-20 in his last 2 years as a Broncos head coach. If you look at that on the surface level, that looks bad the same way Matt Eberflus does. I'm not defending the point Ye made, but like you do got to take that first year into consideration in terms of, yes, they were intentionally losing, but he didn't make it look any better. I didn't see much steps being made. I didn't see players improve. I didn't see, foundations being laid. I think it all just kind of happened by coincidence, but I don't know. I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth at that point. I agree with the statistics at this point, and the only coach even comparable right now is Dennis Allen, and he's out on the street as the Saints head coach. So to support Kanye West's point. So 10 starts for Caleb. The good, 4 TDs. The bad, other 9 games has 5 and 7 turnovers, 5 interceptions, 2 lost fumbles. Yikes, 6 out of 10 games, 0 TDs. Lost to Jaden and May, heads up. Those I can argue a lot.
All I'd like to tell Kanye is that the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Shane Waldron, he's a big reason as to why there was some skids. And this is not an original thought or point by me. It was actually brought up by the wonderful J2K Designs, who I know has contributed to the BearSki film project. He was the first to coin that Shane Waldron was on the spectrum. And when you look at it, once I saw that picture of him smiling at Caleb Williams while Caleb Williams is on the sideline, dejected, sad that he's losing and his offense isn't producing, I think it speaks volumes to Mr. Shane Waldron having Asperger's. He just can't read the room socially. He can't connect. So just a little point I wanted to bring up. But I'm glad that Thomas Brown is the man pulling the strings now.
That's good speculation. Instead of Shane Waldron at
the very least.
That's some solid speculation. And to that point is, I even observed it from last game. You never needed Shane Waldron to be a top 5 OC. Never needed that. Never wanted it, never needed it, never expected it, frankly. You needed him to be middle of the pack at very worst with some higher level talent and just complementary football. This team right now pretends that they're the Bills, pretends that they're the Chiefs or the Bengals, and they have these like high flying offense with these amazing skill talent receivers. And you do have the talent there to do that, but you don't have the execution, you don't have the experience, and you don't have like the offense or the interior line help to do that. What you should be trying to do is be the Steelers and play defense and win 24-20 because you have a slightly better offense than what the Steelers should be able to put out. What you saw the first whatever games is them trying to be the Bengals, them trying to be the Bills, spread out, all that stuff, and I don't think it worked. What you got out of Thomas Brown was the 18th best coordinator in the league, and you got 18th best coordinator results. You almost beat the Packers by intelligence. If you look at that game, and I've heard this point be made, that was almost a flawless game plan against the Packers. It was almost perfect. It didn't work out for you.
Solid. It was rock solid in what it was, and I don't know if it's your point or Paulie's point, but you always, one of you two always bring up you want to play checkers before chess. You did line up your fullback, Doug Kramer at fullback. Did he get the ball? No, he blocked. Roshan Johnson, he was the one to get the ball at the 1 yard line. So there was just no bullshit, and I really appreciated that. And my final point regarding Shane Waldron was just that we saw the writing on the wall. Maybe the McCaskies signed off on Shane Waldron because there were some real similars, right? You saw a Geno Smith get elevated, quote unquote, maybe, even though I think that is showing to have more of just a confidence thing and just Geno being Geno. And then you also had your 3 great wide receivers, right? You had 2 really proven receivers and a rookie who was highly touted. Okay, let's get this guy in and he can get some production out of our investment into these wide receivers. But we saw the writing on the wall. We had JSN asking if the interview was live before he slandered Mr. Shane Waldron. So we saw a chance of it not working out. And the weird thing that I like is that the Bears did interview Thomas Brown to be their offensive coordinator just straight up. And what they ended up doing was bringing him in as the passing game coordinator. And I don't know if he was their fail-safe option, if that's why they felt so comfortable keeping Eberflus and getting rid of Waldron. I don't know. So far, so good, but it's always the case in the NFL where when you fire the offensive coordinator, you're going to get a boost because you just don't know what you're going to get. Did we already see Thomas Brown peak? It's possible, but that would suck.
Yeah, I think I heard this point on a radio station where the Bears are great at making a colossal mistake, borderline fixing it, or at least salvaging it, and then patting themselves on the back for fixing their catastrophic mistake. And I think that's a this is a perfect microcosm of what the Bears do all the time. Look at this. Shane Waldron was an absolute buffoon. He's an idiot. He's this and that. But you know what we did? We fired him 4 weeks too late. We brought in Thomas Brown to kind of pick up the pace. And look, we salvaged the season. We didn't lose every single game. And look at Caleb kind of had a better way. So I think that's just kind of the typical stuff of what you're going to see. But couple more points, just kind of like with the chat, just because it's invested in, and I like it. But Broncos being 8-9 last season, Bo Nix being 6-4, Commanders 4-13 last season, Commanders 7-4. But what we're looking at, Kanye, is improvement. And right now, I know it's saying Kanye, right? What are we saying Kanye with?
No, look at the chat, man. I love the Ghost of Judah tribe. He's like my shadow. He's following me around, man. I have a lot of respect for you guys. I'm not going to talk negatively about any viewer because just like you, Dave, I appreciate any viewer, whatever you are. But he's telling me that the McCaskies are fine and they want to fire me. But
I've banned one fan. I've banned one viewer before, if I'm being honest, because they're just trolling, and I don't like trolls. But not a big deal. Broncos are improving though, right? Significantly. Commanders are improving significantly. The timetable is shockingly similar to what the Bears tried to do or are attempting to do. But what are the Bears doing? They're regressing rather than improving. So that's kind of the last thing. Eberflus has a defensive mind. Thoughts that I could get into this really into the weeds. I think he's a upper 12 if we're dividing the league into 32 teams and you got like 16. I'm going to say let's just call that an even, 33%, right? Like 10, bottom 10, mid 10, top 10. I think he's right leaving the middle 10. He's like 11 and he's entering the top 10 depending on a given week. I don't think he's exceptional. What I think he is good at doing is simplifying the game for defensive players and letting their talent take over into those games. But I don't think he's good at doing anything special schematically. We've talked about that. The only thing really he changed with Alan Williams is adding a little bit of pressure before they had Montez Sweat, which helped the defense slightly, marginally. He was a little bit more aggressive based on what he saw the team needed. The absolute absurdity of not giving a game plan with any type of 4-down lineman system where you can do a cover 2-man situation and swap your corners. Absurd. Me and you talked about this, Carl, that Tyreek and they have to stick to the sides.
They may just be piggybacking off of what Mr. Jalen Johnson was familiar with and very good at, because it was the same with the Kyle Fuller experiment. They just didn't switch sides, even with Fangio.
He does prefer to have his right shoulder to the sideline too. I've noticed that. Jalen
Johnson?
Yeah, he's better at that.
Is that right shoulder the one that has given him issues?
Yeah. So I think he likes to have that to
nuts.
his outside corner. If you've ever noticed, he always favors that side so that he can kind of always throw that and then open back up when he needs to chase down.
I didn't think about that. Literally designing a defense to keep your star player healthy. That's nuts.
Yeah, kind of observe it. I did pay attention to that ever since we've talked about it too. I did see some sides flipping, but that might have been in situations where Terrell Smith was in rather than Tyreek Stevenson. So then maybe there's some sort of combination between them.
Because in a vacuum, if you have a right-handed quarterback, because the most number of quarterbacks in the NFL are right-handed, you want your number one receiver to the right? Because you can kind of just whip back and throw it, and you can see it better instead of throwing across your body. So Jalen Johnson isn't even playing the number one wide receiver side.
Theoretically, no. If my observation is correct, and I could be wrong, but if you've ever noticed, he's always at the top of your screen. Jalen Johnson, he tends to be, right? When you're watching from the broadcast side.
When you're looking at the defense, let's say that you're looking at the defense, you're the quarterback and looking at the defense. Jalen Johnson's to the left.
Yes, usually.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of been my observation and like my little conspiracy theory is I think they're just kind of protecting his right shoulder a little bit because then he could tackle with the left side coming down to the line.
That was the only reason he went in the second round is because of his shoulder. So
yeah, and he's heard it in the NFL as well.
Yeah.
But to specifically answer that question, I think he is like I said, he's a top 11 defensive coordinator in this league, maybe top 15. I think on a good team with a good roster with less responsibility and not having the responsibility of game management either, I think he could elevate himself into a top 5. This is one of those few coaches that I see the Bears getting rid of. Matt Nagy, for God's sake, is about to get head coaching interviews after this season, probably yet again, because you can salvage your career like that. And I've seen some flutters around that. Matt Nagy being kind of promoted as a offensive.
That's what a Super Bowl ring or two does for you.
Absolutely. So I think depending on the team and depending where he goes, I could see Matt Eberflus kind of in the next 2 years rehabbing his image and becoming a top 5 coordinator. I don't think he's anything special schematically. I don't think he's going to reinvent the wheel. But I do think he's really, really good at taking talent that is specific to that type of 4-3 scheme, simplifying the game to give them instinctual play. The linebackers crash down. The lineman, he's never had really that much talent in that area, but he does make chicken salad out of some chicken shit linemen, and it elevates the kind of the cornerback play. And the cornerbacks, like I said, also have a simplified game. I think the only area he's never really excelled in is safety play, but that could be a talent issue as well.
Call it a secondary. I mean, he was the coordinator for the Colts, and the only other player who I think, like in a vacuum, fully healthy, outside of Kyler Gordon, bias aside, probably the best slot cornerback in the NFL is Kenny Moore. He pops up all the fucking time. I'm sure he had a lot to do with Kenny Moore's development. And when the Bears hired Eberflus in 2022, they had the absolute worst trash secondary on this earth. And they have brought in the talent. They have developed it. You're seeing things like Elijah Hicks step in for a Jaquan Brisker injury. Josh Blackwell, I absolutely adore him. More of a special teams guy, but he can come in, play ball, totally fine. And then guys like Terrell Smith, Jalen Jones, these guys don't miss a beat, man. I've always said the Bears have the best secondary in the entire NFL, bar none. Statistically, they're tied for best, again, per my favorite stat, EPA per DB. But other than that, I mean, you're right. His defensive line probably never the best, talent-wise, and that's why we're bringing in a guy like Eric Washington. I'll digress there. If we want to transition to some other NFL games, absolutely feel free.
Yeah. No, I think we're going to move back into the NFL. The comments I'm just kind of reading, and they're almost, it's kind of following the same tune. Just to last 20 comments, absolutely not. You should not put Bajan in for many of the same reasons. You just don't put any back.
Another comment that J2K has made that I adore: don't give oxygen to the fire. We know what the fire is now. Let's suffocate it.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that. So, Lions dominating week to week. This was the shower thought that I was telling you I kind of had. So I want to see what you think about this, Carl. The Lions are dominating week to week, but the Vikings and Eagles are right there at 8-2. Which team has a chance of knocking the Lions out when it matters most in the playoffs, and why?
So you're going to have to figure out the division winners. You're going to have to figure out who's going to have a chance in the playoffs. The Lions are not going to play at home against they might play at home every game in the playoffs, but they're not going to play the Jaguars every single week. That was a unique thing. The Lions are a terrifying football team simply for the fact that they had a quarterback throw 5 interceptions. Call it 4 legitimate interceptions and a Hail Mary at the end of the first half. And they won a football game against a playoff-bound team on the road. The Lions are insane. Who has the best chance of knocking them out? Are you saying before they reach the Super Bowl?
No, the question is structured in basically implying that the Eagles are going to meet them or the Vikings are going to meet them in the playoffs. I think based on the NFC South and whoever joins them, right, it's going to be Washington, probably going into Atlanta, maybe Tampa. I think those are the only playoff teams. Green Bay might enter the fold if they kind of keep up the hot streak. But where did you feel like they have a chance to lose, or where they're going to, kind of misstep?
I hate to say the best chance that the Lions have at losing in the playoffs is probably in the Super Bowl, based on the fact that Jared Goff could become Jared Goof at any moment. Ben Johnson, hopefully for Lions fans, won't let him become Jared Goof ever again because he got it out of him this year. Like the NFC South winner, do they have a chance of beating the Lions in Detroit? I don't think so. We can talk about who wins the NFC South. I think it's going to take a spectacular quarterback performance. And as a Bears fan, this is going to fucking suck to say, but I mean, Jaden Daniels could be that guy. If the Redskins win their home playoff game, maybe they go as a wild card. win? I don't know. Do they have a good chance? No, I don't think any NFC team has a good chance of beating the Lions in the playoffs, especially in Detroit. But I think it's going to take a spectacular quarterback performance. I don't know if your comment about Jalen Hurts was on air or off air. I think nothing of him. I think that he's a very undeserving player as far as his contract. I don't know if the Eagles have it in them, maybe, but I think it just takes a special quarterback performance to beat the Lions this year.
So here's my thoughts, and it was just kind of like, I don't remember the last time we've seen a team this consistently dominant. We haven't seen this. When's the last time you've seen like a
scary,
15-2? 15-2, but not just 15-2, like beating every average to below average team 50-10.
It's like the Harlem Globetrotters.
It's unbelievable, and I think we're
Yeah.
taking it for granted. I'm at this point, because the Bears are done for, I'm a Lions fan. I'm a Lions fan the rest of the season. I am giving them and the Bills like my support to go win the Super Bowl. Somebody's got to win it, and if I have to choose one of them, it's going to be Lions or it's going to be Bills for me. I respect what the Lions are doing, and they're proving me wrong a lot of the steps of the way. I never believed in Dan Campbell. I thought he was a rah-rah buffoon, and I didn't think he was going to be a long-term head coach that actually mattered. I was wrong. I think the Lions are very close to an implosion in the sense of Ben Johnson leaving and the talent kind of leaving, and I don't think it's something that Dan Campbell can keep together all on his own. I will put it that way. But what he's built there is kind of crazy. And I don't think we've seen this in a while, because it's an NFL of parity in the last 5 to 10 years. Every team loses a random fluke game. And we look back, and every team, even the best ones, are like 13 wins, 12 wins, 14 wins. These guys are going to win like 14, 15 games easily. I don't see them losing many games, and they've already beaten the best competition on their schedule. They've beaten the Packers at full health. They've beaten the Vikings at full health. So Jordan Love was groin injury or whatever it was, but
we don't have to slander the Packers because they did just beat us. I think that the Bears lost to the Packers more than the Packers beat the Bears. I don't view them as this anything. I don't think that they probably could sneak into the playoffs, but I don't know if they're good enough to do anything. And you saw what they had. They had a home game against Detroit, and they got treated like the Jaguars. They got blown out. So if Detroit finds themselves playing their first game of the playoffs after a bye week against the Packers, place some bets on some overs on some stuff for the Lions. They're going to put up another 50 burger. I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, for sure. So to answer the question directly, I don't see anybody stepping in the way of the Lions other than Super Bowl contenders. And I don't think there's any real Super Bowl contenders in the NFC other than the Lions. I think the Eagles are going to fizzle out, like you said, mostly due to Jalen Hurts. I don't think the Vikings are for real because of Sam Darnold. And until they replace those quarterbacks or fix that problem, I still don't understand why AFC quarterbacks just don't choose to re-sign or sign contracts with the NFC teams and just compete with somebody for NFC titles every year and try to win Super Bowls, because the AFC is just so loaded that I don't see anybody stopping the NFC, any solid dominant team. I suppose there's one team that we didn't really mention, if they somehow get their shit together, is the Niners, but I just think that's too far gone for the season. If the Niners were the Niners, I would see them as their only true competition.
I don't know what injuries have had players out for the year. I think once they lost Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel is perpetually hurt, I just don't see, too far gone for the 49ers.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on. We're kind of going conference by conference, division by division. How do you feel the NFC South is shaking up, and who do you think wins it?
So, obviously, we can make fun of Kirk Cousins, have Kirk Cousins be the failure in primetime when it matters, all this stuff. They're playing good football, man. The Falcons, I don't want to say are legit. I need to look at the scores because I believe they got blown out by Denver. But originally, before any injuries, after the first month of the season, I thought the Buccaneers were in prime position, man. I think the world of Baker Mayfield. I'm so happy for him to rebound his career after the disaster that is Cleveland and come back and start on an MVP downright trajectory with the players that he had. But my God, you lose Chris Godwin, who was playing out of his mind because of a contract year. He's just a good player. But then Mike Evans as well. He has a chance to come back, but that hamstring could be an issue the rest of the way. It's going to be a dogfight. Thankfully for them, the Panthers are the Panthers, and the Saints, although they're rebounding a bit, they suck as well. So I don't know how many times each of those, the Falcons and the Bucks play those two teams. But it comes down to those two teams. In a vacuum, I still like Baker Mayfield more, man. The Buccaneers still have some key pieces with Vita Vea, Levante David. They've got some pieces. I also think the world of their safety, Antoine Winfield Jr. Fantastic player. So they have all the makings to win the division, but it's going to be a dogfight, man.
So I just don't think the NFC is anything that's relevant this year.
The NFC South, that is?
NFC South, yeah.
I agree with you on that. I agree, unfortunately.
I think that even at the top, we're talking about a team that arguably, and here's more bias, you take the Bears, they're probably winning that division this year. If you just drop them in or swap them out with like the Saints. The Bears, as bad as they are.
Like 6 automatic losses, you get 4 automatic wins against the Panthers and the Saints. So
right. So I just don't think that they're anything to write home about. I think the Falcons are frauds. They just got their asses kicked by the Broncos of all teams. So I'm not gonna really entertain the NFC South in the sense of thinking that anybody who wins that is going to matter. But I do think the Falcons win it kind of by default. Kirk Cousins having a good bounce back year. I think the weapons are good there. I don't know how much more Kirk Cousins could even maximize those weapons. Or if you replaced him with a different quarterback, how he's making that offense run more smoothly. I think that offense is peaking, and this is almost like the best that you could possibly get out of that. And I'm with you too. If Tampa was healthy in any way, shape, or form, I think they run away with that division. There's a nice little bet there for you. Where the Bucks are minus like 700 to even win that division, and I think even with the injuries, they have a chance. So I think Tampa's coming back next year with a vengeance. They better start drafting some replacement wide receivers for the long term. But as long as you keep Baker Mayfield there and you kind of go with him, I'm with you. NFC South is, a little bit going to go through Tampa for the next few years, depending on how good Michael Penix shakes out and what that situation is going to be.
Let me read off some games for you for the rest of the NFC South teams, the primary 2. So for the Buccaneers, the rest of their schedule looks like this. At Giants, at Carolina, at Las Vegas, at LA Chargers, at Dallas. You heard me. Oh, I'm sorry. It's versus the Raiders. So you've got 4 out of 5 games in a row on the road. After at Dallas, you've got home games against Carolina and New Orleans. That sounds like a lot of wins for the Buccaneers, all things considered. The Falcons, they, I believe, are going to be on their bye week now, so they get to heal up after getting their butts kicked. They have to have a home game then against the Chargers. Then they go at Minnesota, at Las Vegas, versus the Giants, at Washington, versus Carolina. So there's a couple layups there, in my opinion, between Carolina and then either the Giants and Raiders. I don't know. I think that the Bucks have an easier schedule moving forward.
Yeah, I don't doubt that they could actually win that division by any means. So I'm with you. I just wish that they were healthy, because that's a team I actually enjoyed liking and rooting for, because I don't know what it is about them. They're kind of like that underdog scrappy team that I'm kind of all in for, in Atlanta for some reason.
A lot of the NFL teams are going to take on the persona of the quarterback, right? Baker Mayfield is not a rah-rah fuck you guy, but he's like Joe Burrow off of a caffeine high. Like, he's cool, but he's also awesome. So if Baker Mayfield gets his way to the playoffs, I wouldn't want to play him, regardless of his supporting cast.
And I'd root for him too. So finishing up the last division of interest, I think that we're at, and I think we can expand on this a little bit more. Are the 49ers, in your mind, still the favorites to win the West? Or do you think that their window's closing along with, like, side by side with Arizona, Seattle, and
they're not going to fade away into the nothingness? And I don't want to say, because I don't know what each team's schedule looks like. I'm not going to say, because it's a dogfight, that the winner of the NFC West will have only 9 wins. But there's just too much talent in there for me to say that the 49ers can leapfrog whatever's going on to try and sneak their way in. I love Kyler Murray. I love what the Arizona Cardinals are doing. They beat the brakes off the Bears, and I don't think it was a fluke. And then on top of that, you've got the Seahawks, who are sneaky good. They're probably going to end up fourth in that division. And then the Rams have, in my opinion, the best head coach in the NFL. I absolutely adore Sean McVay. I think he's fantastic. And they're getting healthy at the right time. They've got an MVP, actually, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I don't think Stafford's ever won an MVP. But he's got a triple threat, or a triple crown wide receiver who, when healthy, is as good as it gets. And Puka Nacua shocked the world last year, and nothing has changed this year, even after his injury. So, that all things considered, I don't think the 49ers are going to run a table or anything and get into the playoffs. Who wins the division? I think it's a real toss-up between Arizona and the Rams.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have a secret. Me and you have a very out loud secret of wanting the 49ers to tank by association with a fading interest in the 49ers tearing their team apart and giving pieces back to the Bears. So I'm with you there as well. I do not really think that the 49ers are going to – I think they're still the most talented team in that division, to be honest with you. But I don't believe that they're the best team in that division at this point just because of the injuries and how I think that they're kind of just running short on their leash as a team, if that makes sense. I think they've maxed out what Kyle Shanahan could do with that roster. I don't think that there's players that are kind of leaving anytime soon necessarily, but if you couldn't have pulled the trigger and gotten better by now with the 49ers, I don't see that kind of bar graph is going to just keep going up, 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 up. I think that bar graph started really high up, plateaued really hard, kind of had some peaks in it, and now I don't really expect much other than a decline in that 49ers team moving forward. And even if they come back healthy next year, Christian McCaffrey's just another year older. Brock Purdy contract situation is going to get nasty and ugly. Ayuk's going to show signs of being a diva, and Trent Williams is really old. So I don't know where...
you're going to continue to see those signs with Mr. Ayuk. I am positive of that.
I agree. I mean, he had an argument over what color shorts to wear to practice with his head coach. That's just insane to me. So,
and hey, sit out the entire training camp, buddy. Here's your contract. I mean, the way that they're running things, I love you saying that they spiked, plateaued, and you had some peaks, because they have like 3, 4, 5 of the highest paid positions per their position in the entire NFL. Off the bat, I believe it's your left tackle,
middle linebacker, back maybe.
Middle linebacker with Fred Warner.
So I just don't see them getting much better. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Absolutely not. I don't. I guess in tandem with the point I just made, the salary cap. I mean, it's going to hit a breaking point, I think. I'm a believer that the NFL salary cap is a myth. You can do whatever you want, but I'm having a feeling it's going to come to a breaking point with them, just like we're seeing with the Saints, where they finally have to trade away a Marshawn Lattimore, get some cap relief in that regards. And then regarding Kyle Shanahan, this is something that I think is adding to the frustration rumors that management is maybe having with him and what is being exploited with the 49ers right now. I saw a video where someone talked about how they are not allowing Brock Purdy to change the protection schemes when it matters. Or I guess in period, he's not allowed to call protection adjustments at the line, right? So you don't want to do it all game, but what the good defenses are doing and how the Chiefs won the Super Bowl is you take advantage of what's happening. So you overload one side of the line, you back out of it, and you have the player who's overloading come over like a Trent Williams, and he's a free rusher, right? And Brock Purdy knows this. He's just not allowed to change the protection scheme. So he says, fuck, I got to go to the hot read. If the defense knows he's going to the hot read before the snap, you just cover the hot read. And then you're able to get, force fumble, blow up the play, whatever you need to do. And that's kind of a shortcoming. It's almost like an ace in the hole that a defensive coordinator has against the 49ers. I don't know if that's true. I'm not going to pretend that I am a guru and can look into that and decipher that. But what's happening with the team, that would make sense because they're just not winning football games.
Yeah, I think much more than, and even if that is true, sliding protections and kind of identifying your mic and overloading one side and all that stuff is very, very crucial. Obviously, I wouldn't be shocked if Mr. Irrelevant wasn't allowed to do that over Kyle Shanahan. Would I be also offensive? Would I be offended as a fan, being like, well, who am I going to trust here, Kyle or Brock? So to that point, you're not wrong. I think what held them back for years, and you can say some teams are just snake bitten, or some teams, their injury history is related to how they coach, how they play, how they practice, how they condition. They have absolute studs everywhere, but they're always hurt, and they just can't help it. Talanoa Hufanga, always hurt, absolute stud. Next, Troy Polamalu, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. Kittle came back, had an absolute monster game, and then I saw him on the injury report, and it was the least shocking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And he's a top 3 tight end.
Absolutely.
And so it's just, I don't know what it is about them. Are they snake bitten? Is it something with the conditioning, strength and conditioning coach, how he handles all that stuff? But I think that is much more what holds them back every year than it is kind of. And then you got CMC with his Achilles tendonitis. This is not going away.
Yeah, man. They overused CMC last year to get him his record. All I want to say is two sides of the coin to this, right? 49ers, they play a lot of football games deep into the year. They've gone on deep playoff runs. How many times? It's a lot of football games to be played, and football's a hard sport. I'm not surprised that they have injuries piling up whatsoever. Flip side of the coin, Chiefs are the exact same thing. How are they winning all these games consistently? So maybe it is the strength and conditioning. I don't know. But to see all these injuries pile up after all these deep playoff runs, I am not surprised.
Yeah, I guess to answer that side of the coin, what I see from the Chiefs is almost like kind of comparing to the NBA. You could see some players in the Chiefs locker room taking breaks week to week when they know they don't have to go balls to the wall, but it's enough to win. They kind of understand that. Whereas like I think the Niners and Shanahan and how you said it's like kind of the quarterbacks are almost the indicative and take on the personality of the team, or the team takes on the personality of the quarterback. I think the team is taking on the personality of Kyle Shanahan, where it's this guy who's just so frustrated that he has not won yet, that he's like, I'm going to kick every team's ass every goddamn week, whether it kills me or not. And it's just kind of that personality of desperation. And yeah, I think it's part of that too. I think, and this is why I secretly do want a Kyle Shanahan moving on thing. I think it's best for him too. I think it's one of those mutual parting of the ways that we talked about pre-show, where it's Andy Reid and Philly all over again, where, you know what, Andy, you're not bad. We know you're not bad, but it's what's going to be best for us in the long term, and it's what's going to be best for you. And I think Kyle Shanahan, and my secret dream is always for him to come to the Bears and get full control over it and kick the McCaskies in the ass and all that stuff. I just don't know if that's even the best choice for him. I don't think it is. But I do see a world where Ben Johnson goes to San Fran. It's the best case for him. It's the best case for San Fran. He can maybe elevate some players and kind of retool that roster over 2 years. And you get the excuse to retool, right? Because with Kyle Shanahan, if Kyle Shanahan needs to retool the roster for 2 years, it's only going to get harder on him. He's only going to get more pressure, and people are going to call for his job more and more and more during that retooling process. But Kyle Shanahan gets a fresh start with like Joe Burrow, like you were saying, maybe with the Bengals, or something like that.
Please don't speak it into existence, man. That seems like a nightmare.
I know. Just, I don't want it. Just Kyle Shanahan, Bear or nothing. But, yeah, I just think it's kind of like one of those mutual parting of the ways, and I think it's going to be a fresh start for everybody. And then Sean McVay's kind of the rumor of retirement as well. So I don't know how that NFC is going to go, that NFC West, but I think it's the Cardinals division to lose this year, and as well as the next few years, because I think those teams that were good are on the downturn, other than maybe Seattle, because I think I like what Mike McDonald's doing with the defense. But until I don't see Geno as a competitive, realistic long-term quarterback either. So
Geno would be like the perfect Nick Foles, like your MVP quarterback tore his ACL in the middle of his MVP season, and you have to bring in a backup. Geno Smith would be the perfect guy for that, to get you into the playoffs and win it out of like desperation almost. If you get a chance, just watch a Kyler Murray game. Kyler Murray, fantastic quarterback. Love him. I think that, little guy syndrome, they pegged him as being a loser because he was short. He's a great football player, man. And one of my earliest takes with the Bears, I wanted Marvin Harrison Jr. and J.J. McCarthy. That Marvin Harrison was not wrong. He's had some stinkers, he's had some clunkers, but again, when it matters, he's clutch. He's a good wide receiver.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't listen, because I don't know how I feel about J.J. McCarthy either, but you're a Michigan man. So.
Like I told everyone in the beginning of the episode, Michigan bias.
Yeah, for sure.
It's okay.
Prometheus, we agree with you every step of the way. San Francisco would be absolutely irresponsible. Let us have our dream, okay? Don't yell at us, all right? Let us dream. Just let us have our little fantasy, and we'll speak it into existence a little bit. And then, it's funny because we also talk pre-show about all these memes kind of going around, that mini Bears Twitter that we always see. And it's starting to pick up some steam and some traction. So hopefully the McCaskies feel enough shame after this year to take another step back, fuck off this year, and let someone actually come in that knows what they're talking about. And that's Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Because I would be very okay with Ryan Poles being fired if the replacement was John Lynch.
The added benefit, I don't know if I want to spend more time on John Lynch. The added benefit of Kyle Shanahan is getting his dad. His dad can still identify talent probably until the day he's going to die, which I hope is not anytime soon, because he was able to identify Kirk Cousins over RG3. He was able to identify Brock Purdy as a Mr. Irrelevant. Maybe it's only for quarterbacks, but just think about this. Last year, imagine a prime Caleb Williams with that football team. They win that Super Bowl.
Easily, yeah. We do have one more topic that was added last second. The Chargers are quietly second in their division behind Kansas City only. And is it time to start considering the Chargers as a actual contender in the AFC, or do you think this is a little bit of regular season dominance by a evil Michigan head coach that just kind of came in and is carrying them through the regular season?
I love seeing the Bears fans who either wrote off Harbaugh for whatever which reason. I didn't get the pleasure of watching him as a Bears quarterback because I don't think I was alive. But he is a hell of a head coach. If you need any sort of idea as to how good of a coach Harbaugh was for Michigan, you're a Bears fan. You know well and true that for the last 11 games, ever since Brett Favre took over, the Packers have had a stranglehold of a dominance on the rivalry against the Bears, right? Turn that to the Michigan side. Every single fucking year, Ohio State would not only beat Michigan, they would fucking kill them. In Columbus, in Ann Arbor, they would destroy them. Bring in Jim Harbaugh. Or it's Jim, right? I struggle with this as well.
Me too. I get it. I get it wrong every time. I believe it is Jim Harbaugh.
I'll call him Mr. Harbaugh. It didn't happen immediately. But he got to the point where he was beating the brakes out of Ohio State. And it was fucking awesome. So imagine having a Bears head coach, or a head coach in general, who's able to take the Bears and start beating the Packers' ass. That's how I feel about Harbaugh, Mr. Harbaugh. So what he's doing with the Chargers, I'm not surprised of whatsoever. We do have to see it in the playoffs, right? The social media quarterback. I'll deem him as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. G. Herbo is fucking awesome. And his first half against the Bengals was fantastic. They lost momentum, but it's Jim. Jim Harbaugh is always going to make his quarterback feel like he's the best, most awesome human being in the entire NFL world right before a football game starts. And you want that positive mindset, and it's always going to hopefully result in a good performance from the quarterback. On their defense also the coordinator, who's a national championship for the undefeated 2023 Michigan unit. They've got some pieces, man. Derwin James might be the best safety in the NFL. He's fantastic. I love the way that he plays. And then I don't know if it gets much better as far as a tandem pass rush than a healthy. It's Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So they've got some pieces. They could make some things happen in the playoffs. Every single day I'm starting to think that they are going to make it. But my God, that division is strong. Chargers. We talked about the Broncos, and then obviously the Chiefs. I mean, if it wasn't for the Raiders, that'd be the best division in football. But
I just hate that. Going in order, I mean, I was a Harbaugh guy. I think you were too, hoping the Bears got him. I think the only arguments that people had,
wet dream, or it was a wet dream.
The only arguments people had, even in the offseason, was he's too much of a control freak. And I was like, shut the fuck up. That's what you want. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. I don't get it. Everybody regrets it now in hindsight. I'm going to stand on business and just be cocky and just, this is what I wanted. I don't know why the hell you didn't. I don't get you. If you don't get that, then you're not really necessarily following
the reason
real football. You're playing Madden too much right now.
The reason that Jim Harbaugh is not a member of the Bears is because of Kevin Warren. That's just how
I would like to think so, because they just didn't get along in the Big Ten, correct? If that's
right,
what
exactly,
my understanding
yes.
is.
Yeah,
so
there was
Kevin
always
Warren
bullshit.
Can suck a dick simultaneously.
Yeah, there was always bullshit against Jim Harbaugh. Kevin Warren, not the team president, but the team preacher. Fuck you. But I'll
Yeah.
I'll let you talk. I'm sorry.
No, I'm with you on that. He's running that team, and it's funny because I think we talk about this as well, that the Bears just have this obscene amount of talent that is being so misused and underused. And you look at a Chargers roster that had 1 year to retool. You'd want to talk about a retooling of a roster. It's all based on personalities. There was no talent gain in the Chargers locker room since last year that was so tremendous that would improve this team from what they were last year to what they are this year. And they're 7-2. It's all personality. It's all complimentary football. It's all hopes, dreams, belief, and all the things that a good head coach would do for you. Running the hell out of the ball, playing solid defense, asking your quarterback to throw smart balls, not just jump balls. It's exactly what the Bears needed, and we missed out. To answer the question directly, the Chargers are absolutely for real. I think they're going to be playing one of the biggest spoilers in the NFL playoffs this season. I think they started off slow, and I think they're getting better. And I think they're believing even more. And I think it is one of those situations of these players weren't 100% sure if they were ready to believe all the way. And now that they're kind of believing in the system and believing in what they're doing, I think they're only going to get better. And again, they're like the Buffalo Bills. Their trajectory is only going to go up in the next 5 years because they're going to have more draft picks. They're going to have players who want to play there. They're going to have receivers, wide receivers. You want to talk about a T. Higgins team, buddy? There it is, right there. That's your T. Higgins
I have
team.
no idea what their cap is looking like, but yes, absolutely. Just want to say, as far as maybe not adding talent, it's not wrong to say that both Joe Alt and Lad McConkey could sneak in as Pro Bowlers. Obviously, there'd have to be something with McConkey to be a Pro Bowler where there's injuries / players saying, I don't want to go, so he'd be a reserve, whatever you want to say. Those are two slam dunk draft picks. Joe Alt, by the way, my favorite nickname in the entire NFL. Control, Alt, Delete.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that, and yet again, you want to talk about somebody who would have taken control and insisted on a certain system and drafting strategy. It's what the drafting strategy should have been here, right? You should have traded, gotten Caleb because that's what you had. You had that bonus first overall pick. Say what you will. Let's just entertain that idea. You take it. You slide out of Roma Dunze.
No.
You slide out of that. You get an offensive lineman. You go get Keon Coleman in the second. You go get a lineman in the first. It just makes sense. If you really want to,
Roma Dunze is the best skill position player on the Bears on that offense.
Sure, and 2 quarters equals 50 cents. It's not much to say. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
We haven't gotten a chance to see it. He hasn't been treated like the number 1 wide receiver in the playbook. Just give him time. You will see.
Yeah, it's a nice bonus, but I don't know if it necessarily makes your team better in the short term. So by the time I think this team is good, Roma is going to need a second contract, and so is Caleb. And one of them is going to get paid, and one of them is not. And the guy who gets paid is usually the quarterback. So that's my 2 cents on drafting 2 guys that important at the same time. I don't think it's ever.
I believe the way it'll shake out is that DJ Moore's contract will be 100% off of the books when Roma Dunze needs to get paid. So you pay your 1 wide receiver. Again, quarterback, you can finagle that whatever which way. Obviously, we're living in a fantasy world regarding that, right? We need to be in a position where we're saying, how are we going to pay Caleb Williams $60 million a year? No quarterback has ever been paid this much. We desperately want that situation. It is not a problem to have that situation.
Dude, you didn't even know my bonus question of the night, and you led me straight to it. So I have 3 teams on each end of the spectrum, and I want to see if you can kind of connect the dots here. What I'm asking you, which team do you forecast in a 2 to 3 year span that you'd want to either be a fan of, be a fan of, or just project to be the best? Who do you think right now is projecting to be the best team? Bears, Broncos, or Patriots? I eliminate Washington out of that because I think you can put the dots together because they're already projected pretty well, and I think they're just going to be a 10-win team for the next 5 years, as long as Jaden's healthy. But Bears, Broncos, Pats. How do you feel about those 3?
It's a hard question because there's kind of mixed things, right? Out of all 3 of those players, I think that Caleb Williams is the best quarterback, and second would be Drake May. That leaves Bo Nix to be the worst of the three, and I downright don't think that Bo Nix is any good. Again, he's proving me wrong each and every time he throws the football. But on the flip side, the best coaching of the three, at least currently, far and away Sean Payton. Sean Payton was acquired literally via draft capital. That's how good he is. So the question is, which team do I want to be in 3 years from now?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, like it's just what is your highest level of projection slash you want to power rank them. Let's say who you want to be. Who do you think is the best team in 3 years? Power rank. 1, 2, 3.
I mean, I don't want to add the idea of how good they are compared to their division or their, AFC versus NFC.
Head-to-head matchups. Let's just say that. Who's the best teams here?
I'm going to put the Patriots at 3. I think that they have a lot of work to do, and I know that their offensive line situation is precarious with injuries and whatever the case is. Talk about rebuilding an offensive line. I think that the Bears have a really good head start on that compared to the Patriots. The Broncos have sneaky good talent because I think that outside of Jalen Johnson, Mr. PS2, Patrick Surtain II, I think that he's one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. It's a really hard position to find and get right. And again, it's going to boil down to coaching. I just don't know what else the Broncos have as far as like do the Broncos have a stud defensive tackle that I'm failing to remember?
No,
like a young one.
Not to my knowledge.
I don't know. I just don't want to be a homer and say the Bears again. You know what I think about Roma Dunze. I think that their future is really bright, but I feel like you're putting me on the spot a bit. I'm gonna say Broncos, and I'm gonna stick to my guns with Sean Payton.
Okay. And then, so here on the other side of this, I got 3 more teams for you to kind of I can throw in a fourth if you really want, but Bengals, projection-wise, in 2-3 years, what are we looking at with the Bengals? You can give me wins. You can tell me what they look like. You can tell me whatever. Bengals, Cowboys, Jaguars.
Bengals won by far, and Jaguars, Dallas, that's really tight in my opinion because...
I can give you a fourth that was on the bubble.
What's
Miami.
The fourth? I'd rather be Miami than the Jaguars or the Cowboys. The Cowboys have this exceptional, extreme, high-end talent. I don't think the world of the quarterback, but he's capable to say the least. But I think CeeDee Lamb, amazing wide receiver. Micah Parsons wasn't supposed to be, but he could be the best edge rusher in the NFL. Not because of pure pass rushing ability, but his versatility as well. But I don't want to be the Cowboys in any stretch. Like, you've got one of the worst owners, Jerry Jones. I am not a fan of Jerry Jones. But the Cowboys need so much to go right for them to stay competitive. That feels like a house of cards to me. And I'm sorry, what was the team that wasn't the Jaguars?
Jaguars.
The Jaguars are screwed. They paid a bad quarterback a lot of money. But would I rather be the Jaguars than the Cowboys? Maybe. But absolutely bar none, just because of what I think about Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, I would want to be the Bengals regardless of any other of those 3 teams.
All right. So this thought experiment was 3 rookie quarterbacks and then their projected kind of future. And I took 4 of the top 6 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, and we literally looked at those 3 teams in the beginning and just kind of had high hopes for them. And with the other 4, with the 4 out of the top 6 highest paid quarterbacks, we're kind of forecasting like, I don't know, this team might be a catastrophe in 2 to 3 years. So I think this is showing a little bit of our bias towards how we feel about the salary cap and how to pay quarterbacks in this league. But maybe we don't want to pay quarterbacks anymore. Maybe the NFL should rethink that a little bit. So.
PJ on the Bears Country podcast, he's a proponent of essentially going the Soviet Union route, whatever you want to say, and saying that a player cannot have more than a certain percentage of the salary cap. And
me and Paul have done a full episode of that, yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I think yes, because it's better than the solution of making quarterback cap space not count against the team cap, which was another proposed idea. I think that would be unfair because then you just get guys like Patrick Mahomes making $500 million contracts and then not count against the cap space. And then you'd have the wild, wild west of the quarterback exchange market, which might be interesting on the surface. but it's not going to be interesting for teams that draft their quarterbacks. So I think the Soviet response, I think I like better than, because really there's no two other ways around what you're doing here, right? It's the same way when the rookie cap got hit during the Ndamukong Suh and Sam Bradford draft. You had to put a cap on it. You had to stop it somehow. Otherwise, these rookies were going to just demand the highest paid player in the league money.
It was after Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford got an undeserved fat bag, and then after it was like, okay, we have to put the rookie draft.
Well, that's what it was.
It
was Sam Bradford and Domin won 2, I think, that year, and they both made like 60 mil. And you had the guys like Fred Taylor making like $2 million. So it was it was untenable, it was unsustainable, and then they raised the veteran minimums and all that good stuff, and they made it work. But the really only two solutions with the highest and most important position in all of sports, I don't care what anybody says, the quarterback position in all of sports is the most important and hardest position to play.
Thank you. The word hardest should be brought up there as well.
They deserve that money and they deserve to be paid like it, but to say that the cap hit wouldn't matter, Patrick Mahomes would be a Dallas Cowboy, because Jerry Jones would say, "I'll give you $1 billion," right? And then what are you supposed to say?
I'll give you a portion of the salary the franchises,
exactly. So that's not fair. So I think in terms of the solutions to that problem, I do like the no percentage. Paul and I also did an episode of this. He put great graphics together where he showed what the cap hit percentage wise was for top 10 quarterbacks throughout the decade, and how much they counted against the cap and how good that team was. And those graphs went tremendously. Where am I going this way? Tremendously down. Back in the day, the top 10 quarterbacks were Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, guys that mattered, guys that deserved it, right? And then now as you go through right now, we're talking a league where Dak, Tua, Joe Burrow, and Trevor Lawrence are the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. And they're going to be playing for under 500 teams for the next 5 years.
Jordan Love, literally the highest paid on an average annual basis. I mean, it's kind of alluding to the quarterback issue the NFL is having, because we want immediate success. We have 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 picks of the NFL draft. You need this instant, immediate success. And to be fair, we are seeing that. Caleb Williams, like it or not, is playing just fine. Then you've got Jaden Daniels, MVP candidate. Drake May, sneaky good. And like Bo Nix, same thing. Each and every week, every time he throws a football, getting better and better. But
we haven't even seen J.J. McCarthy yet, so
due to injury, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You have to allow these guys to play and develop. And if you don't have that because of this immediate pressure, all of this stuff, you're never going to see good quarterback play. And you listed the golden era, in my opinion, right? We did not know how good we had it. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and you even had a Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers. Exactly. You had this incredible cast of players, and a lot of those guys, it took time for them to develop. But nowadays, we're just simply not seeing that.
Yeah. Fun thought experiment. And Carl, I think we're all set unless you have any closing statements for the week. Great show. Great for our first NFL national perspective show. Great participation in the chat. Thank you for everybody. Let's try to keep it civil moving forward in the chat rooms and all that stuff. And we'll definitely be back and try to keep something going on Bearski Film that's interesting and relevant and talking about winners and champions as opposed to our unfortunate Bears. So thank you for everybody tuning in and participating. Carl, we'll be in touch. Thank you to everybody. Go check out Thigh and Smy podcast, please.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, anyone who's listening after the thought, let us know, because a lot of the viewers in the chat I recognize as Bears fans. If you guys are listening after the fact, just let us know what your favorite NFL team is, especially if it was about a team that we talked about, Bills fans, Ravens fans, Steelers fans. Let us know if we're downright wrong, or if you think that our opinion as Bears fans is kind of accurate to what you think of your favorite team is.
Yeah, that perspective always actually matters. Sometimes whenever we get a new player, I don't know
Yes.
about you, first thing I do is I go in the chat rooms and see what the fans are saying because they're usually right. So that
Exactly. I
opinion
wanted to
matters.
see like Seahawks fans. What do you think of Daryl Taylor when we got him? Things like that. It's super valuable, and to have kind of, I don't want to call it an outsider because we're all NFL fans, but having a different perspective matters. It's awesome and much
Yeah,
much
agreed.
appreciated.
Yeah, Carl, take care, man. I'll be seeing you shortly, and thanks again for everybody who watched. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bear down.